The Elizabethan worldview is of course the way in which the Elizabethans in Shakespeare's time understood the world around them. Now it relied heavily on something called the Great Chain of Being. But before we get too much further into this, I just want to say that there are three things you should remember when talking about the Great Chain of Being in terms of Shakespeare. And they are as follows: order good, chaos bad, don't kill the king, and watch the weather. Right, let's dig into it. The Great Chain of Being is something which the Elizabethans got from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato and to some extent Aristotle. Now it was Plato's idea that the world was arranged into a perfect hierarchy and that this hierarchy meant order. Okay, at the top of this hierarchy we had a supreme divine entity. Now this entity to some extent was Zeus and was not Zeus. Plato didn't believe in all the gods that we commonly associate with ancient Greece, but we had this one guy at the top who is, as I said, the supreme divine entity, and he governs everything. Below we have the muses, below we have the heavenly bodies, which are the sun, the moon and the planets and so forth. Below we have humans, then we have animals, then we have plants, and then we have inanimate objects, dead things and stuff. And the idea is that this is a hierarchy where everything influences what is below them, but you cannot influence what is above you. One interesting little fact about this is that the word influenza actually stems from this, because back then people didn't understand why people suddenly got sick, but it must of course be under the influence of the planets. So influenza is actually a reference to the Great Chain of Being in the sense that it was thought that it was the planets which made people ill by their influence. Now, centuries pass, the Western world goes Christian, and in the 13th century medieval times, a guy called St. Augustine discovers this and thinks, hey, this is cool, let's make it Christian. And this is what Christianity does an awful lot. It finds something and just makes it Christian so that we can use it for our own purposes. And this is actually pretty easy in terms of the Great Chain of Being. Because at the top we have of course the supreme divine entity, that's of course God. Below we have the muses. We don't have muses in Christianity, but we have angels. Let's just put in angels. And the rest basically just stays as it is, and suddenly we have a Christian edition. And the way it works is that this hierarchy is good and keeps everything in order by divine right. Okay, and if you start challenging this order, you sort of open the doors to hell, which can then spread chaos from below. So you maintain the hierarchy and keep everything in order, or you open the gates to hell, basically. The Great Chain of Being was more than just religious philosophy. It was also a very important political tool for Queen Elizabeth. She's trying to stabilize the country after many years of religious unrest. England has gone from Catholic to Protestant, back to Catholic and back to Protestant again within a time span of 12 years. And this is serious business. The regent before Queen Elizabeth was called Bloody Queen Mary, and she earned her nickname because she burned Protestant priests at the stake. Even though she was only there for a very short time span, I think it's between 280 and 300 Protestant priests who are burnt as heretics at the stake. So Queen Elizabeth is trying to calm things down. She says, right, the country is now Protestant, but what's in your heart, I'm not going to ask any questions about that. So you can be Protestants inside, just don't flaunt it. Okay. But this is also why it makes sense for her to adopt a system which talks about this hierarchy of being divine. Because within each sphere, there's also a hierarchy. Within the sphere of animals, you have the top animal, which is the lion, of course. And within humans, you have the top human, and the top human is, of course, the regent. And she is, of course, the top human because God put her there by his divine influence. Okay, so the point is that if you mess with the hierarchy, if you mess with the queen, you mess with the divine plan of God, and then you open the doors to hell. So this is basically saying that if you start a revolution, if you challenge me, if you challenge the system, all hell breaks loose. So this is also used to stabilize England at this point, and it makes very good sense for Queen Elizabeth to adopt this system because it really serves her point very, very well. So, how important is this stuff with Shakespeare? Well, if you look at his plays, these ideas of the great chain of being pervades his plays on many, many levels. He seems to have believed in it himself, he seems to have lived by this idea, and also you have to remember that the theatre back then was an extremely political affair. And it certainly is in the Queen's interest to reproduce the idea that you should not attack the regent because it goes against the will of God, to have this idea reproduced in the theatre on a daily basis. So there's certainly a very big political side to this, as we also touched upon before. Now, in terms of his plays, Macbeth is the great chain of being play of them all. In Macbeth, there's a nobleman, Macbeth, who is in a battle. He goes into the forest, meets some witches, and they lure him into the idea that he could kill the King of Scotland and take the country for himself and reinstate himself as king. He does this, but he does not belong in that place. He has transgressed the spheres and he's broken the hierarchy. And he even sits there while he's king, feeling that how the clothes seem too big for him. So he's in the wrong place. He's not there by divine right. He's there because he took it and he broke the hierarchy. And the result is predictable. Chaos erupts from below. People die all over the place, of course, but the weather's also bad, right? It's wrong for the season, and there's a guy who sees evil omens all over the place. There are horses eating horses. So the idea is that we have these strange unnatural creatures, witches, and they were terrified of witches at this point, who lure Macbeth into challenging and disrupting the hierarchy, and we basically open the gates to hell so chaos can erupt from below. And there are many sort of little things you can find in the play which sort of support this idea. So Macbeth is, of course, the big one. In terms of Romeo and Juliet, it becomes a bit more complicated. We have two families who are at war with each other, the Montagues and the Capulets. And we have Romeo and Juliet from each their family falling in love. Now, because the families are at war with each other, their dads won't allow them to see each other. It's forbidden love. Now, according to the chain, it seems that they are breaking God's will by not doing what their dad tells them to, because he is also there by divine right. But the fault is actually that you can also be a bad ruler, because they are not supposed to be warring, they are supposed to sort out their differences. So you can actually also break the chain by being a bad ruler, and you can find this in other plays as well. King Lear, Hamlet springs to mind. And there's an extra level to this, because there's actually a prince in Verona who's constantly telling the two families to stop fighting. And the prince is, of course, above them in the divine hierarchy. So the two family fathers are supposed to do what the prince tells them to. So they're also breaking the chain by not listening to the influence of the guy who's above them. So it's the family fathers, the families who fail, and we end up with this tragedy where the two young lovers kill each other. And in this play we have the same thing as in Macbeth, where we have omens and bad weather and all that kind of stuff. So it's a bit more complicated, but the whole great chain of being is certainly also very, very relevant and present in Romeo and Juliet, and there's lots to find. Right, summing up. As I said in the beginning, order good, chaos bad. Now, by far the most of these plays have a situation where we start out with order. Sometimes order is before the play starts, but order. Then we have chaos, and then we're back to order again. In the tragedies, the order is restored by someone tragically dying. In the comedies, no one dies, and that's kind of how you know it's a comedy or a tragedy. But order, chaos, order. That's the usual sequence. Now, secondly, I said don't kill the king. And by that I mean you have to look for the people who break the hierarchy. You have to find out who is ultimately responsible for chaos erupting, right? And those will usually be the ones who are at the top of the chain but who still do not fulfill their duties, okay? Because they are answerable to whoever is on top, which ends up being God. So they break the chain and they are responsible for everything which takes place below them and everything which goes bad beneath them, right? The last one, I said watch the weather. And by that I mean you have to look for all the unnaturalness. Witches are unnatural. Bad weather for the season is unnatural. Bad omens are unnatural. All these things erupt because someone broke the hierarchy. And those are essentially the three things you should be looking for when looking for the great chain in Shakespeare. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please write them below in the section. And also, if there's another subject you would like me to touch upon, please tell me so in the comment section. Thank you very much.